Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. What I'd like to discuss this morning with you are natural vine cordages and withies. And there are lots of materials in the wild that you can use for lashings and bindings so that you can conserve the resource of cordage that you're carrying. And cordage is a very important aspect of our survivability, both short-term and long-term, because it allows us to do so many different things, which is why it's one of the 5 C's of survivability. What I'd like to talk about today is a couple options that you can use in eastern woodlands for lashings and bindings that are a natural type cordage material available to you. One of them behind me here is a large stand of honeysuckle vine. And honeysuckle vine is a good substitute for a lightweight cordage that you can use for lashings and bindings. And I'm going to show you how to harvest it and how it works today. Stay with me. Okay, so the first thing we need when we're harvesting this type cordage or going to use it is we need a couple stripping sticks. And stripping sticks are just 2 sticks that aren't too far dead, but they're easy enough to harvest off deadfall from the ground that we're going to use to peel the outer material or the outer bark off of a vine material that we're going to use to make cordage. And in this case, like I said, it's going to be wild honeysuckle. So I'm just scraping the bark, the outer bark off of this. And I want these 2 sticks to be able to sit fairly close together like this with not much gap in them when they're squeezed together with my hand. So if we just reach in here and grab one of these that's hanging and start pulling on it, it's growing up the tree. Now the higher it gets and the woodier it gets, the less good it's going to do you. But I've got a good piece of cordage here, probably 10 feet long. Now I'm just going to take these 2 sticks and put it between there and push it with my thumb, and you can see it peeling that bark off. And if the cordage breaks on you when you're peeling it, then that part of it wasn't any good. You're going to have some of this, especially in the wintertime, that's going to dry out, and it's not going to be as good as the other stuff. But you can see how that rips that outer, okay, there, it broke right there. So that gives me a piece that I know I pulled through. That's a good, there's 1 arm span and almost 2. So I've got probably 7 feet of cordage right there. That should be pretty good. And I can just continue to come through here and harvest that. I can take that and wrap it in my hand, just like this, and stuff it in my pocket. Just wrap it inside of itself, just like this. Make myself a roll of cordage. Stuff that in my pocket and harvest some more. So we'll stick that down in here and we'll get some more of it. We'll grab one more piece off of here. Usually where they're growing together, there'll usually be 3 or 4 of them growing in the same spot. There's one right here that looks, well, it might be the one we just had. There's one right there. Oop, that one wasn't very good. It's too dried out already. You'll have to pick through them to get the ones that are good. And you'll get to the point where you kind of recognize a good one when you see it. But they grow in huge clumps of vine in here. There's a pretty good looking one right there. Let's pull this one out of here. This one's got vine wrapped all around it too. And these bigger vines are fantastic tinder sources. With this bark that comes off of them in shreds. We use this a lot at the Pathfinder School for a tinder resource. And you can see where this vine's growing off the larger vine. So we'll snap that off of there. And then we'll pull that runner down out of the trees. And where it ends and starts to grow into a bunch of smaller offshoots like this with the leaves on it, that's generally the part that's going to be woody enough that you're not going to want it anymore. So just back up to a node and snap it off. Then just go back to your 2 sticks that you had and repeat the process again of pulling off that bark. This stuff is great basket making material. If you need something that's nice and bendy but got some mass to it, this is a bigger piece. This piece is probably 1/8 inch in diameter. This would make great material for making a basket with. And we've got a good piece of it here that's probably 12 feet long. That didn't break when we were stripping it off. And chances are if it doesn't break when we strip it, it's probably going to be okay. Now, with cordage like this, you're not going to want to tie overhand knots in it necessarily. It's not going to be strong enough to take that kind of a knot. But if you're wrapping it around things and pulling a clove hitch in it, or a constrictor knot or something like that, it'll work fine for that, no problem. So we got another good sized piece right there. And again, if I were making baskets and things like that, traps that were basket type traps for fishing and crayfish, this stuff is all excellent for that. And using this stuff when it's wet is best. But you can also soak it for a period of time in lye water or ash water that you've got from your fire, and that will help soften it up as well. It's a little bit stiff right now, but it will still work for its intended purpose. So we got two pretty good lengths of cordage there in no time at all. Now that we've harvested about 20 foot of this honeysuckle vine for cordage, got in our pocket, let's go see if we can find a couple withies real quick. And then we'll take this stuff out into the woods and we'll actually bind a couple things together, and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so now let's talk about withies for a minute. A withy is basically just a hardwood, long fibered piece of sapling material that's been processed down to expose the fibers. And those fibers are used as cordage, and it's called a withy. Now you can use a branch off of a small sapling like this hickory sapling here. And remember what we talked about during our tree identification series, how you can usually tell a hickory because the way the branches kind of grow like this out of the tree. They kind of hook up out of the tree. And that's what these are doing. So I know this is a sapling hickory. It's got a nice, small, flexible branch right here on it. On its lower end, that's going to be a perfect withy. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can use small branches like this that are on a sapling, or you can use a small sapling itself. But what I prefer to do is, so I don't have to cut sapling trees and kill off a whole tree, is I prefer to use the branches. And a branch like this will make a great withy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to process this down. There's a little bit of processing that has to be done to this to make it a good withy. But you've got something right here that's 1.5 feet, 2 foot long that you're going to get fibers out of that you can tie and bind. Hang on. Okay, so let's talk real quick about processing these withies. Now, get this one here that doesn't have any branches on it. We'll use it first. What you're going to want to do with this, you could twist this by hand if you wanted to, but the easy way to do it is just to take your axe, get yourself a good stump, and just start smashing that thing down just like this and separating the fibers. Once you do that, now you've got something that is flexible that you can use to tie. And you don't really need to separate the bark or anything from this if you don't want to use it. You can pull it off if you want to make it look pretty, if that's what you want to do, but you don't have to do that. You can use this thing just like it is, and you can tie a pretty good, healthy wrap on this thing, and you're not going to hurt it any. I'll show you that as well here in just a second. All right, so we're going to start this out with a loose timber hitch here. Just like that. And you can see I've already got that timber hitch pulled on there, and I can yank on that as hard as I want to, and it's not breaking right now. That's a good thing. The withy side. All right, so we've got our timber hitch tied on here, and now we're just going to go around this tree. just like this. Just like we would any normal lashing. And then we're going to come around here and put a frapping on here. Again, this is probably a better two-man job than a one-man job, but we'll be able to get it fairly tight. There, we broke off at the end there. All right, so remember what I said about the constrictor type knots on this thing. You want to not use overhand knots. So I basically just used 2 wraps, 2 fraps, and then a constrictor knot basically on the frapping itself. I want to show you this other side with the vine as well, that way you get a better view. I think I was in the way most of the time over on the other side, but now that I've got one side held up, it'll be a lot easier for me to demonstrate this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our timber hitch tied in here and pull through it, just like this. All right, and then I'm going to do a couple wraps. Pull that dude down tight. Slip down the tree on me a little bit there. Once I've got a couple wraps on this thing, then the rest of it I'm going to use fraps to tighten it down. And with the fraps, what you want to do on your last time around, your last 2 times around, is remember I said you want to use constrictor type knots with this stuff. You don't want to use any kind of an overhand knot because you're going to break it that way. But if you use simple constrictor knots like that, which is basically just a 1/2 hitch that I've rolled in there twice, you're going to get a pretty sturdy thing there that you can hang quite a bit of weight off of, and it's not going to come down on you. All right, so once you've wrapped that vine around there and put that constrictor style knot in there, you got something that's going to be pretty strong. It's not going anywhere. You can put quite a bit of weight on this thing. Come over here and kind of lean on it a little bit. You can put quite a bit of weight on this, and you're not going to knock it down or break it. Okay, so let's talk about places where this vine type cordage really shines. Let's say I want to take a piece of redbud like this, bend it back against itself, because I'm going to make a cooking surface. I'm going to put cross pieces in here so that I can cook something on top of this, like a roaster. All right, I can take this cordage, and it works really, really well for that. Just come in here and get yourself a constricting type knot to pull against on here, just like this, and come in and just wrap it tight. And as long as you're not pulling on sharp edges and you're not tying some type of knot in here, like an overhand knot, as long as you're just doing a basic lashing type movement with this stuff, it's going to work fantastic for you. And it's going to be good and strong. Then I can just come back in and tuck that into itself just like this a couple times. There's once. Come back in and tuck it around again in another simple 1/2 hitch and pull it through. And again, as long as I'm not forcing it to bend over double, and I'm keeping it in a round state or on a round object, it's going to work out perfect as a lashing. Okay, so let's talk about this withy. Now I can split this off into 3 pieces and give myself 3 pieces of material to work with here that are all going to be nice and strong, because remember, this is hickory. Again, if I'm tying up small projects with this stuff, that's where this stuff really shines, but it'll work on the bigger stuff as well. You're just going to have longer pieces or splice it together. But a small piece like this that was just a branch on a sapling will give you 3 pieces of cordage that you can use for a quick lash or a quick wrap on something. I'll show you how that works right now. Okay, so just to give you a quick idea of how strong these withies are, this is all 3 of them together, and I have not done anything to them. And I'm pulling down on them with all my weight. Okay, so let's look at something kind of simple with these withies here for a minute, just to show you how strong they really are. I've got a piece here that's probably, I don't know, a foot long, something like that. I could break it down a little bit to smaller fibers if I wanted to. So we just got one piece here that's right out about a foot long. Now I got a fork and a straight stick here, and if I'm going to make a stand for my rifle, something like that, deer gun season, I want to sit on the ground next to a tree, give myself a good steady rest. This is a really simple way to do that. I can come up in here, and all I have to do is put an overhand in here, just like that, a constrictor's type overhand knot. Come around this other side, yank down on this dude, and I can yank that thing for all it's worth, and it's not coming undone. Do the same thing one more time here on the back side. Again, those constrictor style knots are the key to this kind of stuff. And the tighter I pull that, the tighter it's going to get, and it's not going anywhere. Now I got a good steady rest right there. That's good and stable. It's not going to slip or slide, and it's not going to go anywhere. And it ain't coming undone. One thing about this gun rest, and I've used a gun rest very similar to this a lot of times when I'm deer hunting, especially with like a slug gun or something where I want to get a good steady hold, or if I'm turkey hunting and I want to get a good steady hold on my 12 gauge, this works really, really well. And you can make this thing a week before you're going to hunt and just leave it where you plan on sitting next to a tree or wherever the case may be and come back and employ it. But if you just tie it to one side of the fork and one side of the stick, when you open it up and drop that stick between the fork, it tightens up the lashing, and you can put that thing in the ground at whatever height you want to. Like I said, you can pound on this thing and you're not going to hurt that lashing a bit. That lashing's not coming undone. All right, so that makes a really good ready rest for a hunting scenario, and it doesn't take any cordage to make it as long as you have a withy. Okay guys, well that was kind of a quick video on a couple different types of ready resources of natural cordage in the eastern woodlands. Those are the ones that I use most frequently. There are lots of other vines and things that you can use and other species of trees that you can use to make withies out of. But I wanted to throw a couple little tidbits and tricks into this video, like the folded over roasting cooker that you can make very easily, the ready rest for your rifle or shotgun or your muzzle loader that you can make very easily, and then how to lash up a cross member between two trees very quick and simple with natural cordage as well. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School. We appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I appreciate everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.